What's going on, guys? Dan from SSG bringing you another Edison format match. This time we have Rob on the left playing the Machine Midrange deck that was recently profiled on the channel, a pretty awesome one, versus the Infernity deck, me piloting the Infernity deck on the right. So pretty interesting matchup here. It looks like I'm getting off to a little bit of a slower start on turn 1, just setting 2 back rows. The Infernity deck is really a combo control deck that looks like they want to set a lot of back row before they can really get their engine going, and Rob is going to get off to a fast start here on the left with his mid-range deck, searching out what looks to be most likely a Gear Town off of that terraforming. Very strong turn 1 play, and there is the Gear Town. So this Machine mid-range deck can attack from a lot of different angles. It can provide card advantage via gadgets as well as Machina Gear Frame, but can also provide very powerful OTKs and fast starts from cards like Gear Town, and Rob is going to place that Gear Town into play now. And we're going to see what he's going to do with it. And it's a normal summon of Ancient Gear Beast, so very powerful normal summon, right? I think it's one of the best normal summons in the format. Just being able to drop down that Ancient Gear Beast 2000, threaten to attack into deep prisons, not really activating, no mirror forces, and Rob's just going to declare attack. You don't really need to be killing a monster like a Raikou or a Mystic Tomato for the beast to get value. It's just going to come down and inflict 2000, and it's going to blank all those battle traps that are so prevalent in the metagame right now. Rob's setting 1 back row behind his board position. Really strong start for Rob, especially being on the draw, being able to kind of flip the tempo and take the board right away. And it looks like I'm going to be setting a monster on my turn, looking to get some dark monsters in the graveyard, look for those Infernity pieces to start comboing off with one another. This deck is basically always about synergy. You just want the Infernities in and out of the battlefield over and over, synchroing and getting value over time. But Rob's going to look to prevent that, and he has a really strong start, and another Ancient Gear Beast dropped into play. Rob cares nothing. He does never care about Torrential. I love it. He doesn't respect the card, and it sometimes works out for him here. But looks like there's going to be no response, and the attack from the Ancient Gear Beast attacks into a Necromancer. So Infernity Necromancer walling those Ancient Gear Beasts, providing some virtual card advantage at 2000 defense. So just kind of taking Rob's board position and saying, no, this isn't actually a threat right now. We're just going to wall those cards until you present a bigger threat, commit more cards to the board, and try and get over that 2000 defense point monster here. And Infernity Necromancer is a pretty sweet set, right? Because if it just stays in play, it's going to get value over time as long as we can get an Infernity Archfiend into the graveyard. So really, Necromancer pulling a lot of weight here in this matchup, and it seems pretty solid against the Ancient Gear Beasts for sure. So now I drew for my turn, and I'm going to look and see exactly what my options are here. Rob, of course, still has priority. He still has a lot of things going for him, right? He has 2 big monsters in play. He has the active Gear Town. So a lot of things going right for Rob, and we're going to see how the game sort of maneuvers in this spot, because the Necromancer is kind of acting as a Spirit Reaper, which those of you may know, it kind of feels like a sub game when this kind of wall happens here, where both players are going to look to maneuver and position themselves in a way where you can take advantage of sort of this stally game. Rob would love to have something like a gadget here to start getting value. If he can't actually break through that board, at least he can get some cards over time. But it looks like he's going to set a field spell, destroying that Gear Town. So looking to just go in for the kill in the spot, right? Just going to try and, not exactly a kill, but trying to get over the Necromancer and then attack directly with those Gear Beasts. But it looks like the Torrential comes down. So the newly set Torrential is going to wipe away this board if Rob doesn't have a response. Torrential extremely, extremely strong here. And Rob is going to, says that is a strong card, but I'm going to respond with Dark Bribe now. Dark Bribe attempting to negate the Torrential Tribute. And we have a flip Solemn Judgment, so this is a really important exchange here, right? Players trading off a bunch of resources, but that Torrential essentially getting a 3-for-1. Just the Solemn and Dark Bribe trading with one another, and the Torrential just wiping Rob's board completely. And the Necromancer also will die, but now there's really no threat in play. However, Rob has not used his normal summon yet, which is really important, as well as the set field spell he still has. So maybe he could flip over a mausoleum and start presenting more threats, but it looks like we have a gear frame coming in now, and this is exactly what the deck wants to do. It wants to whittle down resources, exchange cards, and once Rob is now low on cards, he's going to refill with a card like gear frame acting as a Stratos in the spot, just looking to add the fortress to hand, getting some value. And with me at 3000, that fortress is an immense threat. Just being able to come down and threaten lethal once any other damage is put through, right? Say this gear frame gets in for 18, now every threat is lethal in Rob's deck, and it's a really strong play here from Rob, especially with that set field spell still in play, which is so important in this matchup, but also just in this spot, just threatening that damage at any point in time is going to be very powerful. And Gearframe does declare an attack, and I'm thinking about responding here. I'm at 3000, and as I said, if this attack goes through, every threat in Rob's deck becomes lethal. Even something like a yellow gadget, the worst one, will still lethal me at exactly 0. So we're gonna take the 18 though, so going down to just 1200, and Gearframe is just awesome in the spot, man. It's gonna threaten so many different things. It's just gonna threaten lethal, it's getting card advantage, threatens the fortress coming down on the following turn, and I'm gonna have to do something about this board now as I draw for turn here, and my engine still isn't fully online, but here's a Dark Grepher that can maybe do something about that. Dark Grepher is really powerful. Gonna ditch another copy of Dark Grepher, so maybe the hand was a little bit bricked up with cards like Dark Grepher, Armageddon Knight, those type of cards, and we couldn't really get any Infernities going in the graveyard and activating, but Dark Grepher is going to be great here, sending a copy of Krebons. So interesting spot, right? It looks like we're going to set up for a telekinetic power well. For those of you who don't know, it's a very powerful spell card that can reborn psychic monsters out of the graveyard for the cost of 300 life per level. Really strong card, and it's essentially a teleport out of the graveyard, and here it comes down. So telekinetic power well, bringing back that Krebons at the cost of 600 life points, putting me down just to 600, and at this point the life doesn't really matter. If I take another shot from Rob, I'm just going to be dead anyway, so pay those life points, get some value out of your life points, use them as a resource, and now we're going to be able to make a synchro monster. So power well being very powerful in combination with Dark Grepher, sending the Krebons to graveyard. And it looks like we're going to drop a Yugioh Guardian into play now. Yugioh Guardian, really powerful in this spot, as Rob doesn't have any back rows, and it's going to threaten to attack for 1000 here, which it does. And we're going to take that gear frame, and at such a low life total, I like the attempt here of establishing with Yugioh Guardian. I think it's one of those cards that can just completely flip the tempo and force Rob to have specific answers. And Rob is like fairly low on cards. He still has access to that Machina Fortress, but with 2 back rows behind this sort of board position, this is a board position that can run away with the game, but Rob is going to flip over that Gear Town, so no Mausoleum quite yet. Most likely looking to normal summon a Ancient Gear monster with the reduction ability. For those of you who don't know, Gear Town is going to be able to summon level 6 monsters with no tribute in, but Rob is going to summon a gadget here, so interesting sequencing there by Rob, flipping the Gear Town, maybe trying to get me scared, maybe see if I change something like an MST to make the Gear Town miss timing. But it looks like we have Red Gadget just coming in and searching out the yellow. So Red Gadget definitely can attempt to attack over that gear frame, but we're going to see how Rob is going to deal with this entire board position. 2 back rows, Yugioh, and a monster that was stolen from Yugioh, so pretty powerful spot here. But at such a low life total, Rob doesn't really need to focus on card advantage or anything like that. He needs to just push in and try and get those extra 600, and we see that with a Machina Fortress into a Smashing Ground. So unbelievable here. He checks for see what I'm going to have in response when dropping the Fortress into play before committing the Smashing Ground, which is very smart. And then he pops up my Yugioh Guardian. So Yugioh Guardian is going to be a get cleaned answered here, and now he's threatening lethal by attacking into the monster with Red Gadget. Gearframe has 0 defense, so anything can beat that in battle. And now we're going to see potentially a direct attack, but we have a Wing Blast, discarding a dead Brain Control, so getting that dead Brain Control out of hand. Of course, we can't pay 800 life points when we're at 6, getting that Machina Fortress to the top of the deck, which is still a good draw for Rob because he has the gadget in hand to summon it back again. But we're going to see what the play is now. We're both low on cards and card advantage here, right? Rob has the gadget in hand and the gadget in play with the Gear Town active, but that card's going to be dead, at least for this turn. And I just have a set monster and a set back row, so Rob is definitely looking to try and close this game out before I can get any of my engines like going and full humming, because that's when like the Infernity deck can really come back and start doing some nasty combos out of nowhere. But he draws, yeah, so he has a fortress, so fortress for fortress here coming out of the hand and attacking for lethal here, and it's gonna go through. So the Machina Fortress coming down in the late game and just completely winning the game, and that's sort of the power of this deck, just grinding card advantage for card advantage, the big exchange of Torrential Tribute, Dark Bribe, Solemn Judgment, but Rob prevails by having just the late game gadgets getting value as well as the gear frame adding the fortress to hand, and that's the game. So very interesting how these mid-range decks end up playing out, just exchanging resources for resources. But notice how Rob always had the foot on the gas, and that's really important in mid-range where you just have Gear Beast, Galvatron Dragon, Gadget, Gear Frame into Fortress. Like, awesome play, and that's how mid-range decks should really look. But in here in game 2 we have Infernity Archfiend hitting the graveyard from Armageddon Knight on turn 1, so much better start for the Infernity deck for myself on the right, if I do say so myself. Really strong here, getting that Archfiend in the grave and looking to just reborn it over and over again. And Rob is going to draw for turn, facing down 2 back rows, and he's going to start off with another copy of the Terraforming. Very strong here. He has the Gear Town access as well, so he's going to search Gear Town, but he could also go for the 1 copy Mausoleum that's in this deck as well. So Gear Town, really powerful here. He can either destroy it and go for Galvatron Dragon, or just normal summon an Ancient Gear Beast, which both those options are pretty sweet. So I think Gear Town's just one of the more underrated cards in the format as he drops it into play now. Facing down those 2 back rows, he's going to want to bait those out and try and break the board, and here comes Ancient Gear Beast. Such a powerful normal summon. I really do have to have a response here because Deep Prism just won't do it, and we have Bottomless, so I do think trading the Bottomless there is an effective way to remove the Ancient Gear Beast before we can start gaining value by attacking over creatures. So we're going to see what's moving on here next, and we have the destruction of Gear Town, and Galvatron Dragon comes in, so really powerful. Rob just setting a field spell over his Gear Town, getting some fast monsters into play, and this is what mid-range wants to do. It just wants to keep presenting threats over and over again, and when you can present multiple threats on one turn, it's just really powerful. As you baited out the Bottomless here, now you're threatening to attack the Armageddon Knight, which is value, right? You're just getting that card out of play for free and dealing 1600 points of damage, which is also very relevant in this matchup. As we just saw, Rob was very aggressive in the first game and knocking me down, so we're down to 6400 here, which is relevant that he got that early hit in, and a set back row supporting that Galvatron Dragon at 3000 is going to prove to be a little bit of a problem here. So we're going to draw a card here on the Infernity side, and looks like we're setting a back row. So what is going to be the play here? How are we going to answer that Galvatron Dragon? Because, I mean, it's a very fast clock, right? It's going to deal 3000 and 3000 again. That puts you at 400, so you really want to deal with it on the first turn. Just not taking another 3000 if necessary, you know. So, and Rob still has a set field spell as well, most likely another copy of Gear Town or the Mausoleum, which can just put damage into play by normal summoning without tributing. So what is going to be the option here? We know that we have Infernity Archfiend in the graveyard. That could set up a chain if we can reborn that with something like a Necromancer. Of course, we have a lot of extending cards in our deck. Something like an Emergency Teleport would be very powerful. And it looks like I'm considering my options because I think this is a very critical turn in the game, as it's just an early turn in the game, but Rob, you can't just leave Rob there with the 3000 beat stick beating down in this position. And it looks like I would have had some sort of answer, so we'll see what we can do. And Foolish Burial. So Foolish Burial, definitely one of those cards that you expect to have when you're kind of thinking a lot in this deck, because it's such a toolbox, right? It can set up your engine, it can send powerful cards like Plague Spreader Zombie, as we just did. This deck has access to Destiny Hero Malicious. There's a whole lot of cards we want in the graveyard, and we want them in the grave on specific turns, on early turns of the game. but getting that Plague in there, and we're going to activate it right away. So Plague Spreader Zombie is a really good option here, as it's sort of a teleport out of the graveyard, but it also gets a card out of our hand, so we can drop that Infernity Necromancer into play with no cards in hand. And now we're going to activate the effect and bring back our Infernity Archfiend for value, shuffling potentially a bad card away that we stacked on the top with Plague Spreader Zombie. So the Infernity Archfiend is going to grab a Necromancer, and this is sort of a loop that you can get in Edison format, where Necromancer grabs Archfiend out of the graveyard, Archfiend grabs Necromancer for the following turn, and you can just keep doing this as long as you can keep getting rid of that Archfiend. And having powerful access to these tuner monsters like Plague Spreader Zombie is going to be able to make sure you just keep syncing and keep getting value. And now we have a lot of options, right? We can synchro for a level 5, we can synchro for a level 6 here, we can synchro for a level 9, maybe go into Mistworm, and by having 2 back rows behind a powerful synchro monster, that's how this Infernity deck can really gain value and go close in towards an end game and really start just taking complete control of the game. But we're going to see what the options are here, right? I think a powerful option would be Catastor, right? Because it's a very hard card for the deck to deal with. And it looks like we go straight for Catastor by banishing the Plague Spreader Zombie, synchroning with the Necromancer, and Catastor just attacking into the Galvatron Dragon, destroying it by Catastor's effect, and 1800 coming in directly from that Infernity Archfiend. So Catastor, just one of the most powerful cards against these like machine earth-based decks, because it's just so hard for them to deal with. They really have to have a Smashing Ground, some sort of removal spell to get rid of it, or some sort of trap card, something like a Dimensional Prison or a Bottomless. But once it's resolved and attacking, and Rob doesn't have a response, that's a very good sign for us, as these decks just have a really hard time dealing with the Catastor, because they can't really do it in normal means. They can't attack over it in any way. All their monsters are going to die to its activated ability when it battles a non-light monster, so non-dark monster. So really powerful, just really strong in this spot. And what's Rob's response going to be? Now he's facing down 2 threats, right? It's going to be the 1800 Infernity Archfiend, but also 2200 in Catastor, and both cards, I mean, they add up to a lot of damage, you know, so really powerful. And 4000, we're effectively attacking 4000 a turn if Rob doesn't play any sort of card. I do like the ability to summon a gadget into this board. Even though Rob is losing tempo or losing life in that spot, he's still like not throwing away his normal summon and things like that. So, but it looks like he has a better response, so it's going to be a Terraforming here, going and grabbing another powerful field spell out of his deck, which can prove to be really good in this spot, being able to drop down to Gear Town, or get a Gear Town in the graveyard, just set up a big monster. But we really need to answer that Catastor, and that's going to be a problem for Rob, as we'll see how the game progresses. And it looks like we're going to go for Mausoleum. Mausoleum, really powerful card, and he's going to set the Mausoleum over the oh no, he's going to flip the Gear Town first, so looks potentially looking to activate the Gear Town's static ability. But no, he just flips it and then sets the Mausoleum. Maybe he changed his mind there. But we do have the Gear Town trigger, going to sum out that Galvatron Dragon. Galvatron Dragon, just a really strong card in general. Just 3000, comes out for free, no commitment of a normal summon, anything like that. But we're going to see what Rob's plan is here. Is he just going to attack the Archfiend and then pass? Like, what's the idea here that he's going for? Yeah, Rob really needs to answer this Catastor, because it's kind of hard for him to progress his game plan forward. As I mentioned with the gadgets, he can keep some of them for value, but it looks like a Solidarity comes down. One of my favorite cards in this machine mid-range deck. If you guys watch the profile, I explained this card quite a bit because it does a lot for the deck, and he's going to attack over the Archfiend. I kind of like this play a lot, right? Because it just like kind of plays around, kind of goes around the Ally of Justice Catastor, just saying, hey, I'm just going to do maximum damage, right? Like, what if we just like ignore the Catastor and try and just like damage you out in some way? It might be pretty hard if I don't put any more monsters into play, but I think ignoring the Catastor might be a decent strat here. So we're going to see exactly how that plays out. But now it's my turn facing down the 3000 attack point monster. But of course the Catastor will be able to attack that and take it out. So we're going to see exactly what we're working with here, as the Necromancer is still in hand. So we did search that last turn from the Infernity Archfiend. So probably looking to get another +1 or +2 off of that powerful Infernity engine here, as that's how the deck really functions, just getting those value out of the graveyard over and over again. But we're going to see what the play is here, as we have, I believe it's 2 cards to work with, right? Because we wanted our hand empty, but then we searched out the Archfiend, or the Necromancer rather. So it's Necromancer plus 1 random card that we don't know about. And that card's an emergency teleport, just extremely powerful top deck here. Now I remember this turn, as teleport just comes out and just special summons a Krebons out of the deck, and just having access to these tuner monsters at without using a normal summon is so powerful, right? Because then we can use our powerful normal summon to on the Necromancer get back the Archfiend, get value, and then having that tuner makes it so that we can keep getting cards into play and out of play to keep gaining value off of our Infernity engine, as the Archfiend is gonna likely search out another copy of the Necromancer here. And as I mentioned before, we have so much access to different levels, right? We can go for a magical android, a second catastor if we play that. We can go for a level 6. We can go for a 9 if we wanted to wipe Rob's whole board. You know, there's so many different options here in this spot. And we are going to search that Infernity Necromancer. I find myself just going towards the Necromancer most times. I think sometimes you do want the Archfiend, but a lot of times you're just going to search Necromancer because it's just going to set up the chain for the next turn and just keep getting value. So Necromancer is really strong, and it can be hard for a lot of decks to deal with this sort of value engine if you can keep it going every single turn with that access to tuner monsters. And there's a lot to consider in this turn, as there's so many different options, and Rob could have some sort of interaction. I think that at this point I'm not really afraid of the back row, because I think he would have flipped it on the previous turn. And the Catastor is going to be able to attack into that Galvatron Dragon, just straight up destroying it, so I'm not really forced to try and make a monster that's bigger than it, as the Solidarity will kind of like prevent me from doing that anyway. So a 3800 Galvatron Dragon isn't too big of a problem here, but looks like I'm looking for a way to maximize my damage. Is there a way I can kill Rob on this turn? Something along those lines, and I think it's going to be pretty difficult from 6200 to do that, but it looks like I'm going to go for Mistworm here, so sending all the monsters away other than the Catastor to target some cards here, and it looks like we're going to bounce all the spell and trap cards, including the field spell, so that we can get a clean attack in onto that Galvatron Dragon with the Catastor, making sure we can just get that out of the way for free, get some value there. And Mistworm going to come in for 2500, which is a pretty solid stat line, bringing Rob down to 3700. So this is an excellent board. I mean, we got so much value over time. We have a Mistworm in play. We have Catastor in play. Still, Catastor is going to be a hard problem for Rob to deal with, and 2 back rows here. So Rob's going to have like ways to drop Gear Towns into the graveyard, have some sort of way to like actually use all of his cards, right? Because if they're kind of dead back rows or even Solidarities, Solidarity can be a useful card here, but he's going to have a way to utilize it and really like use it to maybe get over the Mistworm, something along those lines. And Gear Town does come into play here as Rob's first play, and we're going to see what his plan is here for dealing with this very powerful board and facing down lethal threats on the other side. So we do have a set here that's going to destroy the Gear Town, most likely the Mausoleum, and Galvatron Dragon comes out. So Galvatron Dragon just coming out over and over again, and this is what mid-range decks wants to do, you know. And here comes a Solidarity, of course, and another copy of Solidarity. So maybe that was the draw for turn here from Rob here, and bringing that Galvatron Dragon, what is that, up to 42 or something like that? 38, 46. So it's a 4600 Galvatron Dragon now. Really powerful. And he's going to declare an attack onto that, onto the Mistworm. And I can't respond by spell trap effects, so we're going to see exactly what is going on here. But Rob just looking to avoid that Catastor again, just maximizing damage. I like the strategy. And in the damage step, Rob is going to draw limited removal. And this will start hitting lethal, but we have a Solemn Judgment here. Instant Solemn Judgment. And do I even live? If I go down to 22, how much do I end up taking? I think, do I end up living by 100 here? So the Solemn brings me down to 22 from 44. And then the attack still goes through, but limited removal is negated. And I live at 100, taking, oh my goodness, that is outrageous, taking 2100 damage from the attack. The Solemn Judgment actually saves me. limiter removal threatened to just completely steal the game. I had complete tempo with Catastor, killing multiple monsters, just gaining value, and Rob just kind of tries to sneak in. He attacks over the Archfiend the turn before and then tries to go for limiter for lethal, but that doesn't do it, and now we have Necromancer coming down again, providing more value over time. Now we're going to search an Archfiend because we ran out of Necromancers. There's all 3 of them in the graveyard, I believe, at this point. So, really strong here. And Rob is now going to be in a bad spot at just 3,700. Ideally, we can kill him on this turn, but the Catastor is going to have to waste this attack dealing with the Galvatron Dragon, of course. It doesn't look like we can actually do any sort of extending plays here, as the Catastor takes down the Galvatron Dragon, and the Infernity Archfiend is going to make a direct attack for 1,800. So, pretty calm play there. Rob still does get another turn, and it looks like he's going to set a card, a back row, on his turn and pass over. So this is it. Rob is facing down lethal. I only have 1 lethal threat in play, so something like a Deep Prison would save him. But here comes Infernity Archfiend, presenting multiple lethal threats and a bottomless. So Rob does end up losing that match, and that was an awesome match. I think both decks displayed their power here. Just Rob with the Gear Towns and Galvatron coming over and over again, trying to avoid that Catastor at any means necessary, almost stealing a game with that limiter removal, but he overall just couldn't overcome the value of the Infernity game plan over and over, gaining value, and that Solemn Judgment was absolutely crucial. Living at 100 is absolutely absurd. Really awesome duel. As we move on to game 3 here, where Rob opens up with a Gear Frame searching out the Machina Fortress. So I thought that game was awesome. Let me know what you guys thought about that game too. That was such a sweet game to play, such a sweet game to commentate. A lot of back and forth and interesting decision making, I think, especially from Rob's side, where he tries to avoid the Catastor. Very, very interesting game plan with those solidarities almost getting him there. And of course the Solemn Judgment puts a foil on his plans, but as the story goes with Solemn Judgment, that does tend to happen sometimes. We have a sweet start from Rob, really controlling start with 4 back rows behind that Gear Frame. That's pretty intimidating from the Infernity side, right? Because you kind of need a few turns to set up your entire engine unless you have an early Dark Greffer. And a lot of times the Greffer, or like the ways to start your engine, could be negated by all those back rows. So we're going to see what happens here, as it looks like I'm setting a monster here and 2 back rows. Maybe a third? Nope, just 2. So not the greatest of starts on the right side for your boy, the Infernity player, but we're going to see exactly how this game progresses, as I think it's a pretty interesting one. Rob is going to grab the yellow gadget. So yellow gadget coming in, searching out the green, and yeah, this is exactly what Rob wants to do, right? This is showing you the type of game plans that the mid-range deck can do, and I kind of like playing mid-range in all games, but it's especially good in Yu-Gi-Oh, where you can just have so many different game plans and like in one deck, right? Because we have the crazy present multiple threats, 3000, the Ancient Gear Beast over and over again, and now we just have like a little like value here, right? We got 2 cards added to our hand, 1 off the gadget, 1 fortress off of the Gear Frame, and against some back rows and advanced position monsters, this is kind of what you want to do. You don't want to commit anything to the board. You want to drop a Galvatron Dragon into play. You just want to like get some value and like see and entice the opponent's back rows, the opponent being me in this case. So we're gonna see what the idea is here, and maybe Rob doesn't even attack. Did he not attack? Yeah, so Rob didn't attack here. I think he told me, he's like, oh, it's probably a Necromancer. I'm gonna save myself 200 life here. I don't necessarily agree with that not attack, because if it's not a Necromancer, you do want to attack it most of the time. But it looks like I set a back row and then pass over to Rob, and I guess like looking at it, Rob doesn't really have a reason to attack if he like thinks it's a Necromancer or like thinks it's a Mystic Tomato, because he is just accruing card advantage in the time being, and I'm not really progressing my game forward in any meaningful way. So I think that the gadgets really give him a reason to kind of sit back and just get some value, get some monsters into play, get some hand advantage, and here comes the green gadget to do so. Especially with all those back rows, he really can play a controlling game and just kind of like card advantage me out in a slower position like this, rather than the very like tempo oriented or damage oriented race that was the last game. But yeah, we're gonna see gadgets just coming in, getting some value, and we'll see if Rob changes his mind on the attack here, if he's still not gonna attack. I definitely like attacking, but Rob does pass again, so giving me a little bit of time to set up my engine, but he might have some ways to interact with me once I start to actually have the engine going, so I don't really mind it. I think it's an interesting play. I think it really depends on what you have face down and the rest of the cards in your hand, but Rob is just gaining card advantage, and being able to draw an extra card a turn because of the gadgets means he's going to be up 2 cards, right? He already added Fortress, that's 3 cards, so he's up quite a few cards as the Dark Grepher comes to play on my side here. And gonna drop an Archfiend out of the hand into the graveyard, which makes a lot of sense. The combo is just to send Archfiend and Necromancer, just getting those both in the graveyard, and there you go. So the Infernity, Archfiend, and Necromancer are both in the graveyard now, and we're gonna see exactly how we're gonna plan to use those and get those out of the graveyard. And with the 3 back rows, there's with the 4 back rows on Rob's side, it's not really a reason to commit to any sort of combo play, right? We're just going to attempt to attack over the gadgets, get some of that card advantage back, and Rob just lets it go through, just taking 500 off of the attack over the yellow gadget. Kind of makes sense, right? It replaced itself, doesn't really matter why waste a card on the Dark Grepher. I think if you're worried about me sending more Darks to the graveyard, that's not too concerning because you have so many back rows to interact with the synchro plays, as well as just card disadvantage on my side, getting cards out of my hand to do that. So letting the attack go through seems fine in this position, and we're going to see what Rob's plan is now. He could just keep summoning gadgets, right? He could just keep summoning the next gadget and then attempt to attack over the Grepher with Gear Frame, which would make a lot of sense. And here does come the red gadget, so I like this play a lot. As like I said, in these like slower positions, you just want to get card advantage. You just want to keep getting value. And look at Rob's hand. He's adding a 5th card to his hand with that gadget, so really powerful. I mean, he has what, 5 in hand, 4 back rows. That's 9, 10, 11, 12 with the monsters in play. Really powerful. And how many cards do I have access to? You know, I have what, 2 monsters, 3 back row, 2 in hand, maybe. Like, he's up a ton of cards here, and it's literally just from like making the decision to not attack and just like not potentially run into a Mirror Force, and just get value with the gadgets. But here Rob does attack down the Dark Grepher, because why not? So he gets over for 100, bringing me down to 79, and we're gonna see what's going on. And I remember looking at Rob's hand in this spot and being like, Rob has infinite cards, but here comes a Krebons, right? So we have a normal summon of Krebons, and most likely you're gonna plan to use it, right? Because there's no reason of just summoning a Krebons and passing, right? Because you're just gonna take a bunch of damage protecting your Krebons by paying 800 to negate an attack. All of Rob's creatures actually attack over the Krebons now, so Rob does need to think about responding to this, because a card like Mind Control, Brain Control could like make a powerful synchro monster. We could also have a flip summon of the monster that's face down that can make a synchro play. There's the Infernities in the graveyard that can easily come back from a card like Call of the Haunted. So normal summon of Krebon's kind of like an enticing play here, and both players like have to think about what to do when the Krebon hits the battlefield. So look like I'm thinking about committing another card here. So it is a Mind Control. So Mind Control really powerful in this deck because you have so many tuner monsters, or you have 3 tuner monsters, but so much access to them. And it looks like we're just going to take the biggest monster on Rob's side, taking that Gear Frame out of Rob's possession, and I imagine the next action is going to be just to synchro into a level 6 here. Don't want to like risk anything else, or like a Book of Moon or anything. If Rob says, hey, you can take this with Mind Control, go ahead, and we do synchro with it immediately. So threatening to make a level 6 here. What's the best level 6 to make in this spot, right? Yugioh doesn't seem like a huge threat, because like, yeah, you could take some level 4 gadgets if it goes through, but like you really want an attack to go through. And Rob might have D-Prison. We just make a Flame Vault Rayquazas. I like Rayquazas in these like slower positions, because like sometimes like it'll just get D-Prisoned, sometimes it'll just sit there and just keep going up in life points and become a very, very lethal threat. So but Rob does respond with Bottomless, so I like Rayquaza because it kind of provokes a response. Like if Rob doesn't do anything and just lets the Rayquaza grow, it does become a big threat. And making the Rayquazas means that I don't have to waste something like a Goyo Guardian or a Bionic. So Rayquaza's coming down, getting bottomless, and then myself setting a back row, and then going for a limit reverse. So this is awesome here. Limit reverse, one of the pet cards of the Infernity deck, just being able to summon a monster out of the graveyard with 1,000 or less attack, going to target that Infernity Necromancer, which can get the engine going here. Really powerful after already making a synchro play, threatening to get some value with the Necromancer out of the graveyard. Rob thinking about what his response should be here, or if he should even respond. And the Necromancer successfully hits the battlefield and activates its effect to reborn the Archfiend. So Archfiend can come out of the graveyard and get value, so that limit reverse just nets so many cards, right? We just got 3 cards off that limit reverse. Really, really powerful stuff here, getting the entire Infernity engine going, and that's why Dark Grepher is such a strong and potent card in this deck, because once we have the cards in the graveyard, we have access to them, we can just reborn them out of the grave with 1 limit reverse and get complete value, get our whole engine going for the following turn as well with a search of the Necromancer. Really powerful here. And I like this position a lot for the Infernities, because now we just get to threaten to attack over those gadgets, not really committing into more synchro plays, but interesting spot here as the Necromancer is in attack position. Potentially we will be attacking into something like a Mirror Force, which could just like blow our monsters away. Although we already replaced ourselves, it's still like kind of annoyance. We really do want to make some headway on this board, because Rob has a card advantage. Like when your opponent has a card advantage, you generally want to have the board, or you want to like make sure you're taking board or fighting for some other advantage. Now that we have our card advantage engine online, we do need to start actually applying pressure to Rob, because Rob just has so many cards. He's going to be able to do a lot of different things with gear towns and things like that, so let's just make him exhaust those cards rather than like him just having the board with gadgets. And we have a Dimensional Prison here. Deep Prison really strong in this spot, because it's going to banish the Archfiend, cutting off the card advantage engine. As I did end up searching a copy of Necromancer, there's no Archfiend to keep the chain going now that it is banished. And this format, we don't have access to Levier, no XYZs in this Edison format, so we're not going to be able to get that Archfiend back. But Rob is going to go for Gear Town here, so pretty interesting. Rob kind of committing to this position with cards, which I find pretty interesting, because oh, and he's going to normal summon a Ancient Gear Beast, so that makes a little more sense. He's not going to go for like a pop play yet. I found that pretty interesting, because I think the gadgets can just threaten to attack over the Necromancer and kind of make value that way. But it looks like I Solemn Judgment the Ancient Gear Beast. That's a really, really interesting decision here. And then Rob is going to Dark Bribe. So both players saying this Ancient Gear Beast really doesn't matter here. And yeah, me taking half my life points, and then also drawing a card, but that Ancient Gear Beast resolving here. Pretty interesting. I think when I saw him Judgment there, to me that means that I have some sort of battle effect face down, something like a Mystic Tomato, most likely, or a Sangan, something like that, because I want to protect it from that Ancient Gear Beast. But I think either way, that's a pretty aggressive Solemn Judgment, and I like the aggressive Dark Bribe from Rob just responding. And Dark Bribe just such a sweet one of it. It does some good work in these type of spots. Just answering a card like Solemn Judgment is also always very powerful, because you're always fighting over something that both players think agree matters, and giving your opponent a card in a spot where like these cards and these interactions matter so much really doesn't matter in the hindsight of things. So we'll see how Rob is going to proceed to attack here, and he's even dropping a Fortress into play. Rob just goes aggro out of nowhere sometimes. We'll see exactly what Rob is going to plan to do with his attacks. Of course, he's most likely going to attack with the Ancient Gear Beast first, so he plays it around a card like Mirror Force. But Rob is going crazy Zur mode, as we see here. Rob's alter ego, just whenever he goes off, he just goes off. He just wants to go in for the kill, and at 3950, he might be able to kill me from this position. And interesting, he attacks into the face-up monster instead of the face-down with the Ancient Gear Beast, because I think he wants to maximize his damage. He doesn't want to get deep prisoned. Sorry, he doesn't. he doesn't want to get like deprisoned with another monster. He just wants to get the 2000 damage in, and it looks like he ends up attacking into a Mystic Tomato with the Fortress. So I think Rob's decision to attack the face-up monster is pretty interesting, because when I saw him Judgment, it basically tells Rob like I have some sort of battle effect, right? I have a Sangan, I have a Mystic Tomato. But he still chooses to hit the Necromancer with the Ancient Gear Beast, going for that damage, and it might pay off. I mean, we're going to see exactly what happens here, but a Armageddonite's going to come out of the deck from that Mystic Tomato, so very powerful here. And we're going to see what we're going to send off of that Armageddonite. There's so many different options in this deck. It's just a very powerful card, and we're going to send the Plague Spreader Zombie, which makes a lot of sense here. Armageddonite kind of walling Rob's 2 last attackers, but we have an MST in the battle phase, destroying his Gear Town if that resolves. Rob just completely going off like literal crazy Zerm mode. And we're going to see what the response is here. I'm starting to look at my cards and fidgeting, so this might be it. The Armageddonite walling those monsters, but it's not going to be able to wall the 3k Galvatron Dragon, and it does come into play successfully. No Torrential Tribute. And Galvatron Dragon gets an attack right away, right? Because we don't have to worry about Deprison or Mirror Force, anything like that. So Galvatron Dragon declaring an attack over the Armageddonite. We're going to see if it goes through here. And me at 1950 definitely facing down lethal. Rob just completely going off. And he built all this card advantage over time. And now he's finally like saying, hey, this is a spot I want to pick to win the game. And now I'm looking at which monsters declared an attack. I'm saying, how can I survive this turn? Because Rob turned all his card advantage into actual threats. And that's the game. I extend the hand and that's it. What an awesome display of this mid-range deck, playing in so many different ways, going value over time, getting this card advantage with the gadgets, and then finally like picking a spot and committing to it and just going all in. And Rob just picked an excellent spot to just kill me. He doesn't want me getting more value with the Infernity monsters. Really awesome gameplay from Rob, and I think this match showed an awesome display of the mid-range deck, how it can play in so many different ways. But Machine Midrange taking down Infernity. Awesome deck. I thought that game too was one of the best Edison games I've ever played. It was so much fun and back and forth. And that is about it, guys. Let me know what you guys thought about the gameplay in the comment section below. Let me know about Rob's gameplay. I thought he played awesome in this match, looking back at it now. So that is about it. And without further ado, this is Dan V from SSG signing out.